big thanks to our sponsors who make the pudding possible. The American Camp Association of Illinois is made up of nearly 289,000 members, volunteers, campers, families, and professionals who believe in the power of camp. They work to disrupt the effects of poverty by providing fundamental services for children and families and learning opportunities for camp professionals. Learn more about ACA Illinois by visiting acail.org. You know the impact you want to make in a child's life, but figuring out the day-to-day details can be overwhelming. Let Camptivities help you make that impact by streamlining the creation of your camp activity schedules. Schedule a demo at camptivities.com.
Welcome to the pudding.
The sweet proof of research to back up what you already know about summer camp. Hi, I'm Dr. Mandi Baker, and my pronouns are she, her.
And I am Travis Allison. Mine are he, him.
Well, today we have the absolute pleasure of talking to Lee Biear, and she is the Business Development Director at Camptivities. Yay, congratulations. So happy to have you on the podcast this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So
Mandi, before you ask your first question,
yeah,
I want to say, I want to acknowledge to everybody listening that yes, Camptivities is a sponsor of the pudding. We actually didn't know that Lee was going to get this new job when we invited her to be here, but I think we should just be fair to everybody and say, yes, Camptivities has been a great supporter of the pudding from the beginning.
Yep.
We still want to talk to research because we know that Lee has got so much good research to talk about. So.
Yeah, actually, like when I first stumbled across one of those wonderful accidents that happens in life, I was at the Women in Camp Summit, and I was doing some talking about research, and Lee was doing some talking about research or data. And in particular, I couldn't get over Lee's passion for data. It was like next level, and I don't think I don't think that's even dimmed in the littlest bit in the last year. Your enthusiasm for data is so massive and so contained. That made it an obvious choice to say, here's somebody who does research in a very different way than some of the stuff we've been talking about on the podcast in the first season, and some of the folks we've been talking about in second season, or talking to rather. So, Lee, how did you get into this? How did you become this crazy enthusiastic person for data, particularly camp data?
Well, I will have to say, I do have a background in research. I have a master's.
Shock.
I have a master's in public health, and I loved geeking out in math, biostatistics, and really figuring out how small data points and in your research can have a huge impact, especially on somebody's life and their community. And I was doing really just small research projects in Latin America as part of my research. And I was doing it on water and water sanitation and just small practices people could do in their community to have cleaner water supplies. And so I thought that was a completely different viewpoint of camp. And then you look back at it, you're like, okay, well, isn't that it's community, and camp is community. And I always loved camp. And I will have to say, I started working at camp when I was 17, and I absolutely loved it. I was there for 7 or 8 years. I would do anything to get to go to camp in the summertime. So I would do all my internships, everything in college and grad school in the wintertime, just so I get back for one more summer. But I loved what camp represented. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to go to the real world now. And, camp was just the magic of camp, as we all say. And that's it. But I kept in touch with everybody. There's that whole belonging and mattering that you talked about, Mandi. I felt like I was living that. And I worked with the EPA, and I did some other jobs where it was all data. I mean, they would give me these huge spreadsheets. People, tell us more about that. And I'm like, yay, yes, I live it, and I loved it. I loved finding trends in data and figuring out things for, just as small or big as a project as the EPA would give me.
Say, as soon as you said that you were public health, all of a sudden all the stars aligned in my brain. I do hang out with some public health researchers, and now you make all kinds of sense to me. There was still these little fuzzy corners where I was like, I don't know, working with numbers is not my thing. Now you make all kinds of sense. And truly, actually, it makes perfect sense to take that public health mindset into camp. Mm-hmm. It does. Mm-hmm. It makes so much sense. Anyways, you were mid-story. Where were you taking us next?
Well, it's okay. So I did that job for a while, and then I had this thing that happened. I had a family, and
right.
now I'm thinking all of my life choices. And one of them was, what am I going to do next? I don't know if I want to keep doing this while I'm raising a young family. And at that same time, like this light bulb moment came on, and the old camp owner of this camp that I just loved called me and said, can you help me with my camp? And can you help me with marketing? And I'm like, there's nothing that's similar about what I was doing for the EPA and what I was doing for camp. And I said, there's no way I can do it. And that was it. And then I was like, well, let me look at stuff. And I started researching and looking at things. And, an hour later, I called her back and I said, I've got 10 things that I think we can do right now to change this for you.
Can we just start there?
Sure.
Because Mandi and I have said offline that this is going to be my nerdy episode versus Mandi's.
I could get in the driver's seat. Now that she said public health, I'm here. I'm like,
Okay.
Get it. I get her now. Okay, we're good.
But so you get a call and someone says, can you help me? And you look at things and you just walk past. Oh, I looked at all these things. And then I had 10 questions. What are the things you looked at?
Yeah, take us through that process. What does that look like?
Well, the first thing I looked at is, as a parent, how do I look at camp, right? How am I researching for camp?
Yeah.
And when I was talking to the camp owner, I said, how are you communicating camp to people? And she told me, and I lived the dream of that camp, and I know exactly what it was. So, like, well, people are looking, I mean, this was like 12, 13 years ago, and people were looking.
How old is my kid? Sorry.
Right? How old is my oldest child?
Yeah, I do that too. So that's the marker of time. How old is my kid? Anyways, Karen.
Okay, people they want to do their own research. And are they seeing what camp is in that space? And I looked at their website and I said, no, this is just telling me what they do. This isn't telling me the value of what they do. This isn't telling me like why should I spend at that time like $5,000-$6,000 on a camp experience? What am I going to get back from my child? And that wasn't there. And I said, okay, well, that's number one. Like, we've got to look to see how people are researching camp. I don't think there's a match there. I don't know what it is yet, but I don't think there's a match. And then I also looked at, okay, how are people looking at camp too? And they're looking at through social media. Social media was just getting going. Like, we can always keep telling the story of camp through social media, and you don't need a website developer. You don't need all these different pieces. But Instagram, I don't even think was going yet. I'm not even sure the timeline of Instagram versus Facebook at that point, but people were very excited about getting to see stories and being influenced by those stories already in the social space. And Facebook was one of the first ones. So I'm like, okay, we don't even have a Facebook account. They had 6 Facebook accounts because people were trying to help them out. Like, alumni were trying to help them out. Then they had a group space. Then they had their own Facebook page. Like, we got to consolidate this. There was just a few things like that right away. And then I went back to camp and said, oh, this is like magical stuff. Like, this is like all the goodness of what camp is. But what does magic mean? Right? What does that look like? And how
Travis pulled a face because he gets frustrated with the word magic because it's too ambiguous, it's overused, it's a non-signifier. It really doesn't mean anything anymore because everybody goes, it's magic, and people are like, well, what the hell's that? So you're right, it has to be broken down, it has to be explained, it has to be justified. Yeah.
And so I'm like, we have stories to tell. And so we just started creating them. And the best place to do it is in the summertime. And then, but holding that, like, that's another part of it.
Yeah.
Holding it and then doing it throughout the year. Now, right now, this sounds like pretty normal, standard marketing thing. But 12 years ago, camps were
cutting edge
like that. It was like something very different. So that's where it got going. And then I kept on going, okay, now we need a new website. Now we need a new brochure. Now we need now we need a consistent blog page. Now we need all these different pieces that people are excited about camp. Now we need our alumni involved. How can we do the best alumni reunion to feed the kids that are coming to camp and getting new kids to camp and what that looks like? And so we've just been building and building upon that. And as that was happening, we got to speak at conferences about this. And that's kind of how I got into it. And I realized camps didn't know how to tell their story. I would ask them, what's the value proposition of camp?
Right.
And their response was, what do you mean by a value proposition?
Yeah.
And so that was where like, okay, we have some education to do here. And that was the exciting part of it is I got to see what people were, where they were, or their first level of marketing and help them out. And I could do it in a way where if you came and you knew a lot about marketing and you just wanted one little nugget, you could come to my session and you can get that little nugget. If you knew nothing about marketing, you could come in there and you could just bring back this like big knowledge base back to your camp and start working it. And so that's where I really enjoyed it. And then people were starting to ask me, so give me more. And I started becoming friends with everybody and going to conferences. And I got this job at Camp Brain and it was awesome. It was about 3 years ago. And I said, what do you guys want me to talk about? And they said, well, we want you to talk about possibly about data. Like, what do you know about it? Like, what are some trends since you're working at Camp Brain? What are some trends that you're seeing? And I'm like, oh, this is where it's all coming together. This is the magic that I've always dreamed of being part of, is getting to analyze data and getting to look at it and then getting to tell people about it. So that was where it all has started for me. And it was just maybe a step from one part to another part to now where I'm at now. And so that's, I think that's really special in the camp space to be able to do that.
Well, I think we take pause for a second here and say, you listeners, you've just gotten a total masterclass here, and maybe didn't know that was happening. You went everywhere from value proposition to talking about the idea of the purchaser, who is different than the consumer in the camp environment. I think often we forget that that is a really weird relationship. Person who pays for it doesn't actually enjoy the experience, and then the experience is being interpreted by the consumer, a kid, to their parents through their kid eyes, and the parents have to decide whether it was value for money. Like, that's all kinds of crazy and mixed. That's a complicated business to run. I think you've also highlighted camp is a business, and there's lots of folks who don't actually come in with business experience, business thinking, or the tools to do it. And you're already calling out all sorts of really important things, like golden nuggets, learning opportunities here. So thank you for throwing that out there. What did I miss, Travis? I was making a list in my head. I swear I need to take notes. This is
Well, there's so many interesting pieces to it. I think the idea of storytelling, Lee, and I want to get to the specifics of your research because I think that's incredible. That's why people listen to us, of course, and that's incredibly useful for camps. But the idea that you mentioned about telling our own stories is something I've thought about a lot, that this camp has this tradition of campfires and stories and time together, and I think that has been a dying tradition in camp, and I've certainly been advocating for that to just be the starting point of marketing, is get your staff and campers to tell stories and give them a little bit of structure so that they know how to do it. And I always say every camp director should have 3 stories ready to go. The story of their own transformation because of camp, the campers, a camper story and a staff member story, and they should have them for any situation. It's like, oh, I'm going to pull that one out and have it. And I go so far as to have my clients write them out. Like, let's work on the structure of it. Let's get the bullet points down so that when you do that. So that's, I think, incredibly important work for people who want to grow camp. What sort of stuff, what have you learned about storytelling in terms of how that appeals to families and gets kids in camp?
Well, I think the biggest part is they want to be able to see themselves there.
Yeah.
So if they can look at a story, if they can hear a story, kids aren't going to go on a website and read a story. They're going to hear about it, right?
Yeah.
They're going to see it on YouTube. They're going to get a small clip of it on Instagram or any of their social feeds, so forth. So to be able to have different stories that can reflect the people that they want to come to camp is extremely valuable. That's why I always tell people, what is your objective for your camp? Is it to have a more diverse community? Is it really just to get more enrollment? Is it to get people from all over the world to come to your camp? So to be able to do those strategic objectives first and get everybody to agree upon them, then you can start like, okay, we need these type of stories. If we want a diverse community and we want an inclusive marketing campaign, what goes into that story? And I think it's as simple as, okay, this is what our community looks like now. This is what we want it to look like. Let's get people involved in that story and show more of those things. I think one camp that I always recommend looking at is Camp Rockmont in North Carolina. And they have at the bottom of their webpage They have all these stories continually moving around. It's from the viewpoint of like this one mother who adopted a child, what that camp experience has meant for them. It's the cultural experience of a somebody who's working international and what that looks like that for them for their first summer. There's all these different stories to show that everybody belongs at this camp. And they don't say everybody belongs at this camp. They show
Yeah,
stories about
they
how
show it.
everybody
Yeah.
belongs. Yes. So I always say look at your strategic objectives first and then reflect those stories based on what you want to achieve.
You're pushing all my buttons today. One of my great frustrations, you talk about first impressions on websites and what that's like and having stories of it. The number of camps that show me a picture of their lodge as the first thing, like, you're not selling real estate. Show me kids and staff, kids and counselors having fun.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
but our lodge is very beautiful. We spent a lot of money on it. It's like
Cool.
people announcing they built a new website. It's like your clients don't care. Your potential customers don't care. Is it easier
Well,
for them? Tell them that story. Don't tell them they built a new website.
Yes.
and you're
Well,
not selling buildings. We're not
Yes,
selling, we're not in the business of buildings.
right.
Otherwise, we'd be architects and we'd be in
Yeah.
construction. And we're in the business of experience, transformative experience. We're in the business of community development and
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
We're in the business of meaningful experience, belonging, mattering. We're in a very different business, a very unfortunately hard to, invisible in the ether kinds of stuff. It is a challenge, but you gotta capture it somehow and showing those relationships and the joy that can bring.
I think the biggest thing you can tell if I know more camps are hiring photographers to take pictures of camp.
Mhm.
And I think the biggest picture that you can always tell your photographer that you could never get enough of is a counselor helping a child.
Mhm.
And a child having a great experience in a safe space. I think that's because you're marketing to a generation of parents who want their kids to have the best experiences and the safest experiences, and they're willing
Yeah.
to pay for that experience. So to be able to show like they're not learning just tennis, but somebody is paying attention to them to learn tennis.
Yeah.
And they're having that and they're smiling and they're having a great time. Well, those are all parts of selling that valuable reflection of camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
And camp directors have to be really specific with photographers, their camp photographers. I've gone in and sat with camp photographers because I've done a lot of camp marketing photography in my lifetime. And I sat down with them and I looked through their photos. And if you're hiring a college age photographer and you say, just go take pictures of camp, you are not doing yourself any justice because what you'll end up with is pictures of staff. If
Yeah.
you just give them you're just going to end up with pictures of stuff. You're like, no, you have to get low. We need pictures of this. We have to be really specific, or else it's just like people taking fun pictures of their friends. So you have to get real specific. That is a divergent from where we want to go today. But I agree with there's so many points that I think are important. Mandy, you look like you had a question.
Well, I was gonna flag a comment that you made about parents. Again, parents are the consumers, they're the spending person in this relationship, and parents care about their children's safety. And I think camp as an industry takes for granted. We're like, oh yeah, we're safe. Of course
Yes.
we are. And there's just sort of this assumption that's well understood, and it's an assumption that has a little arrogance, kind of on the edges of it, that you've communicated, I'm trustworthy. And that's not actually an obvious or a given. And earning parents' trust needs to be a thing. You need to earn it. You can't assume it. This is a bit of flagging. I get kind of excited. This is another person we're going to speak to a little bit later in the season who's done research that keeps pushing back this idea that you actually have to demonstrate to parents that the basics are covered well and that children are safe. Children are worried about where they're going to sleep or whether they're going to have food that they're going to like to eat, not just food to eat, but food that they like to eat. And often in our marketing, we just assume that parents will know that that's an obvious and a given, and their kids are going to have a safe place to sleep, and there'll be supervision, and the food's going to be great. It's not obvious. You need to actually and demonstrate and earn that trust through those things. So that's coming a little bit later. That's Barry Garce. He's doing some interesting research on digital empathy, and that's one of the things that's kind of come back. It's like, actually, you have to prove to me my kid's going to be okay.
Well, and I think getting to use the American Camp Association data, I mean, that's another part of it. They've done all this great research. They're doing all these great standards. I feel like camp owners and directors are saying, oh yeah, we have ACA certification, but parents don't know what that means. And if
Yeah.
they could educate their parents on that level of safety that every American Camp Association camp needs to run their camp, wow, that's really impressive. But they don't, they just put it onto their corner of their website, and they're not showing and not telling that story of the importance of that level of safety. And I wish that would be talked more about too.
And I've been doing this job, marketing consulting for camps for 17 years now. Every new
Mhm.
client, when we talk about where you get client campers from, etc., in 17 years, I always ask, how many new parents ask you about standards or the ACA? And the answer is 0. Every single 17 years. Parents don't care because they don't understand it. You haven't told that story well enough. And we did some little informal research this year with families who hadn't sent their kids to camp. And there's been safety you have to say safety, safe over and over and over again before they'll even listen to you talk about youth development and community connection, collaboration, all those great Camp C words. They can't even hear that.
No.
You don't tell them or prove to them that you're safe.
Yeah. And it's evidence-based. It's actions and substance. It's not just the words, oh yeah, we're good. It's, let me
Yes.
show you what the sleeping arrangements look like. Let me show
Mhm.
you an example of a menu for a week and what options the kids have to dip in and dip out of the food that's healthy and good and tasty. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Scheduling affects every camper and every staff member's summer. It's easy to make mistakes, it takes a ton of time. Bottom line, scheduling is hard, but it doesn't have to be. Let Camptivities help you create a balanced and engaging schedule without the mistakes and without those long days and late nights. Here's what Camptivities can do for you: auto scheduling, camper scheduling, group scheduling, elective scheduling, manual adjustments, over 60 different reports, and tons of customizable settings. That and so much more. And don't wait until the new year. Now's the time to find a better way to schedule and save 15% for the first year. We would love to show you the next big thing in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat. Let us help you get away from your desk and back out to camp. Did you know that ACA Illinois' primary work is getting young people to camp from communities that traditionally don't attend? This includes providing services to 9,000 kids and adults from low-income communities throughout the state of Illinois annually. ACA Illinois has deep roots in using camp as a way to create social change in local, state, and national communities, including creating equitable access for all children to attend camp. ACA Illinois loves to try new things and believes it's how we create the most dynamic impact for our campers, staff, and community. This is why ACA Illinois always jumps at the chance to collaborate with content experts and countless volunteers to develop new and innovative programming. Ready to help us achieve this mission? Join us at acail.org. Are you a camp professional looking for community? Are you a camp interested in accreditation but don't know where to start? Are you looking to grow your career? Are you looking for ways to give back? Reach out to us at info@acail.org and let's get you connected.
Well, we got to this little juncture in your story just about when I was starting to heat up, where you're about to get into Megadata. Like you're starting to talk about, you came to Camp Brain and you were starting to talk about, to me, what I would call Megadata. These are huge data sets, amalgamated, lots of different camps. I'm assuming how many rows and columns of a spreadsheet, or are you in your own software at this point?
Yes. So
Yes.
yes. And I will tell you, the best part of me getting into all the data is that no one would just let me run around in the data. And that was probably a good thing. So I had to build a lot of requirements
Yeah.
of what I wanted to look like. And the best part was I wanted 5 years of data. And I didn't want, I took out anything that was like COVID years. Like, I don't want to know the COVID years. I want to know before and after. Let's take out those years. I don't think they're fair to anybody. And then I also want to look at what is success amongst all camps. Okay, that's a huge term. What is the success
Yeah.
of all camps?
That's a
And
huge
what
project. I hope
it's
you
a
got your PhD
right?
for this. This is bonkers
Um,
amount of, this is a huge, if a grad student said that to me, I'd be like, nope, break it down. That's too much.
Right.
That's too much.
So that's what the developers told me. They told me the same. They said, "Can you break it down into like one industry?" And I said, "Well, let's look at our biggest industry, and that was day camp." So I'm like, well, let's look at what success is in the day camp world, and it's not far from overnight camp. It's not far from faith-based camps. It's not far from all these different other types of camps. So let's look at that because we have the most data of that. And what's the biggest thing that is success indicator is how many kids can they enroll? I didn't look at revenue because I didn't think revenue is fair because every camp is a different price. But people want to know how many kids came to camp over a period of time. And so I had this 5-year data. I looked at all these day camps and I saw like these, sometimes I saw like 30% increase. Sometimes I saw a 10% increase. Then there's camps that I saw that had 65% increase over 5 years and 200% increase in 5 years. And I said, I got to know more. And so I said, there is something here and people need to hear about it. And so that's where I started. I just saw all the ones that had the hugest, changes. And I've got to like call them and talk to them and figure out what they did. And so, of course, in the camp community, people are awesome. Like there's no other place. If I would call from any other thing, can I have 5 minutes of your time to talk about this? They'd be like, no, thank you. But if you call somebody in the off season and you like tell them, hey, we just saw this huge improvement, tell me more. People are excited to share their stories. And so that was really fun for me is to get to hear the nitty gritty of what these camps that had these 65%, 200% increases. And that's where I started with. They're good stories to share.
Can you tell us what did you find out? Why are these people growing their camps in huge leaps and bounds? What's happening?
Thank you for asking. So the first one I worked with was a school out in Colorado, this summer camp in Colorado, and they were attached to an independent school. So they're a little bit different, but they're a huge day camp. And I said, I talked to the director, and in 2019, she took over the program. And I said, tell me about this program. And she told me it's more of an arts-based program, and she's an art teacher, and they do theater and so forth. And said it was a pretty good program. I mean, they were doing pretty well. And then by the time that she really got going, and in 2022, she had like 65% increase in her enrollment. And I said, so what did you do? And she said, the first thing they did was they really worked on their strategic objectives. What are the top 3 things they wanted to do in this summer camp program? And it wasn't revenue. Okay, well, that's huge. So what is your first goal? And they just wanted to have a really strong programming. They really wanted to have good curriculum for the kids. That was their first goal. Okay. So their second goal, revenue's got to be your second goal, right? And they're like, no, we want to have a diverse community. We don't want the same kids. We want to have kids of every background, every socioeconomic status. We want people all over the Denver area to come to this program. I'm like, interesting. Okay. Third one's got to be revenue. And they're like, yes, revenue. Revenue is the next.
There it is.
Okay. So great. So how did you do it? It was interesting. They redid all their programming and they realized it's not about the programming as much as it is about the teachers that were teaching the programs. And they're specialists. And they said they weren't getting paid enough. And so how can you have really incredible specialists that are teaching these incredible programs and building these incredible programs if you don't pay them well? And so that was the first big change, is that they paid them 3 times. They paid them for if they taught for 1 hour, then they got like another hour for putting the program together, another program for planning, and then another hour. So they were getting 3 times their pay. And that's a huge deal to get pay the value of what you're doing. Because I think how do you even estimate that, right? There's so many things that are happening. And then the second thing she said is that they start getting teachers from more diverse areas. So they were getting specialists throughout the school year that were from completely all these different schools all over Denver. So their specialists were teachers during the year, and then they would come in summertime and they'd be art specialists, theater specialists, so forth. So they're looking at, okay, how can we get diverse teachers? Because kids are going to come to programs that look like them. So they started getting these specialists from all over the Denver area. and instead of just in a couple of different schools. And that was a huge change for them as well. So they started changing the geographic area, and they started changing the type of kids that were coming to their camp, and that's how they were getting their diversity as well. The other part is they were using their registration software and saying, okay, this one group is filling up really quickly. Could we like take that program quickly, be agile about it, and build another program right behind it? Find a teacher that we know as specialists could do this and duplicate the program. So they were being agile. They were using the software to be very agile as well. And then the other part that they did too, which I thought was incredible, is like, yeah, we want all these kids from every part of Denver to come, but if they can't get there, how are we going to do it? So they got a whole bus program in
Buses.
too, right?
There
And
we
so
go.
okay, that's equity and accessibility right there. Yeah, and so they changed their whole program, and then they started educating. They really wanted this DII part to really work. They wanted people
Yeah.
to feel from including to belonging, and then they could have stronger retention. So I called her back a year after. This was like in 2022 when I did this. I'm like, oh, I need to follow up and see how they did, like the
Yep.
follow-up interview. And she said, yeah, the DIA training that they were just initiating really took off. And they had a whole bunch of workshops on how to make them feel welcome and belong those first weeks of camp. And what happened was they had another 29% increase from 2022, right after they had that
Yep.
big 65% increase. They also had kids from over 100 different schools coming now. Staff retention was 98%. So they knew that in 2024, they're going to have a much bigger staff retention. And so that was for them, that was a huge success. Like right there, I mean, that was their
Yeah.
success indicators. So that was a huge project for them. And I told the director, Lee Newcomb, who's just fantastic, that is something to hang your hat on, that you've done this program. And by the way, revenue came later. That was 3, and it's put their summer program and their school on the map for what they're doing.
That's incredible. That's incredible. It's like
Yeah.
almost you're talking about stuff kind of unheard, like keep that much staff from one season to another.
Yeah.
Whoa. And I don't know. It's inspiring that the agenda was not revenue first, but revenue follows. I remember being in a workshop with Chris Brown, and he was asking people why they were there, learning about DEI, inclusion, and the kind of work of equity. And then one person was like, it's good business sense. And I was like, yeah, it sure is. I remember talking to Chris not too long ago, a few weeks ago, about the idea of the motivation of EDI efforts, equity and inclusion efforts. And the question is, does the motivation always have to be altruistic or welfare oriented? Is this always about the best of society? And arguably, sometimes it is a business decision. And you know what? I'm kind of okay with if that's where we start, as long as it's done in the right spirit of how it's executed, how it's done, and who we include, and that it's not some sort of token box ticking thing. And that, I mean, this is exciting. They set themselves up to be a place of excellence and a place of inclusion, and that the rest follows.
Well, and it also feeds back the original data from that 5-year youth impact project that the ACA did. And I actually, when I was doing work on empathy, and this was just for how to tell a story of empathy at camp, and I called Lori and I said, Lori, tell me what's going on in the data and the research. Is there anything I can use? And she said, well, it's interesting you say that, because we found that in the role of life and in the camp world, and there's this big chart they had. I don't know if you remember the quadrant charts, and it's very complicated, but when you start looking at it, you notice that kids and staff were had the appreciation of diversity, and they're distinctively learning it at camp. Okay, so now you have that nugget of knowledge, and what can we do from that? And now those kids are like probably Gen Z kids, so they expect that. They expect that they're going to still keep having diversity in their lives, and when they have kids, they're going to expect that diversity in the camp because they learned that at camp, and now they want to see more of it. And so that's the whole, like, I love generational marketing. It's like one of my favorite things to talk about. And you can just see the pieces coming together of the Gen Z era, that research, and when they become parents, what they're going to value in the camp experience. It's all happening.
It's all happening. Get
All
on board,
happening.
get on the train, or be left behind.
Yes, yes.
Lee, can you talk us through. So I think that you brought up an interesting point that camps have all of this data. Most camps who have been around a
Mhm,
while did an online registration or used a registration software will
mhm,
have probably 10 years of data
mhm.
and pull out sections from 20 and 21 that won't
Yeah. Aren't
apply.
helpful. Yeah.
But what can they learn? What can they look for in their own data to make a difference?
Yeah. So that was one thing that I was very interested as
Mm,
well, is
mhm,
what's the health of a camp? What are some things that we can look at to show the health of camp? And I saw that if you take the years of data and you take the ages of data, right? So you take how many kids you got in each birth year and of that year of that season of enrollment, and you graph that out, you can start seeing what that looks like. If it's like a cliff, like, okay, we've got a ton of kids at 11 years old, and then quickly drop like 14, and there's nothing in between. Well, I don't think that's a healthy camp, because the next year, those 11-year-olds or 12-year-olds, they're already starting to go down the other side of the cliff. And so we've got to have a nice, I don't know how to describe this because we're on a podcast, a nice bell curve, a nice hill of ages of children coming to camp, and then knowing if they have the kids to back their spots up, and do we have programming to keep them coming back to camp. So I think the first thing that people can do is start graphing their data. And when I start talking to people about this, they're like, "Well, I don't what?" So I said, ask your registration software for a report on that, like an Excel spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And so they can, the ages of camp and the years at camp. And it also tells them the number of kids they have in those ages. So now you have like, do I have a bell curve? Do I have a cliff that goes straight up and straight down? Do I have like not very many kids and it's kind of flatlined? Those are things that will start telling you, okay, what direction do we need to go into? Do we need to get, okay, we need to get this age group more involved. We need to have more program that keeps them involved. What other things can we track? Like new campers versus returning campers is a
Yep.
really simple one too. But I think that bird eye view of just seeing like the health of camp through the in one season, what does it look like? The number of kids that are coming to your camp and the ages they're at, and just graphing that out. And then you do it every year. So now you have 10 years of bell curves or cliffs, and you gotta
Yes.
start straightening that out, or flat lines. And then you can start making decisions. You can show that to your board and say, okay, here are the problems. We see these problems over our trending data. And this is where we need to improve on. And we need the programs to do that. And
Yeah.
now you're starting to speak their language, like, yes, we do need to invest in this type of programming. Yes, we do need to get into maybe an after school program that can help with these things. You know, there's all kinds of different things for each different type of camp, but that bird eye view health plan is like the first thing I would do.
Well, and I think you said too, we have to be mindful that success looks different for every camp. We talked
Mhm.
about that before we started recording, and
Yeah.
I want to throw that in there. But I know Travis has a question for you. I can see it in his face. Go for it.
Question, anecdote, I'm not sure, but something I want to draw, I want to make sure we focus our attention on that you said, Lee. This is something that very specifically Joanna and I put in our marketing book is do statistics every month, please.
Mhm.
Like, don't run this once a year. You need
Yes.
to know, and this is like all data. If you have bad data, start collecting good data today. Like, it's fine. Most camps have bad data. Don't beat yourself up about that, but just put the things in place to start collecting data now. And
Mhm.
that means what is our registration like on the first day of October this year and last year, and how many new campers? Those are simple stats that you can just put in a Google sheet. I advocate for people putting it up on a screen in their office if they have lots of people, so people can see here's how we compare. But those are simple statistics to do and get them started. It's like websites and Google Analytics.
Mhm.
People who like have never had Google Analytics installed on their website was like, great, put it in today. I don't care if we use it this year. Let's just start gathering data. Like,
Track
let's
it.
have it all in a place. So I
Yep.
really want to draw attention to the fact that it doesn't I'm always worried that these things feel overwhelming to people.
Mm.
And if you start with these small pieces, where's registration at today? How many of them are returners? Let's do this at the beginning of every month for 7 or 8 months of the year. Then please do it for 12. And then we can build, then we can start to learn.
Yes, I agree.
Why do
Yes.
why do you think, okay, nerds, the two of you, you're so comfortable with numbers, and I generally am not. Why do you think people don't collect data? What do you think? I mean, you're using words that when I teach like a first year research methods course and we teach a little bit of quant and a little bit of qual, my students will panic at the idea of opening an Excel spreadsheet, honestly. And it took me a while to get over that myself. So what are the hangups do you encounter? And maybe can you talk camp folks off that cliff? And let's make Excel, let's make numbers a little bit more comfy. So what would you say? What kind of problem, what are the hangups? Why are people not getting into numbers and collecting information like that? And why did they not do the stats?
Well, I think people feel comfortable in doing what they've always done.
Mm,
That's one thing. I think especially when you don't have a lot of staff to do all the other work, right? I think that's one thing that camp is known for is you may have 1 or 2 people during the year working full time, and then the summer is seasonal staff. And then you've got to manage them. So it's hard to find the time. So you wear so many hats. And
mm,
intuition got people so far for so long. Like, if you
nicely
use
put.
data to hire camp staff in the summertime, I'm
Mm,
not sure you'd hire anybody because, like, they don't have a lot of experience yet. You know, when you talk to somebody, you're like, "Yep, that's I don't know why, but you know it, and you know that most of the time it's gonna work out." And that so a high level intuition really has gotten camp directors very far for a very long time. So I think that's part of the reason why they haven't looked at the data as much.
yeah. And I think you made a fair call. I know let's leave, when you're eating and you leave the thing you like least to the last, there's a bit of that going on here. And there's always something else to do at camp. So if you're really not comfortable with numbers or tracking data or analyzing it, you can always find something more important to do and ignore that job. And maybe why some folks just analyze some of that data once a year or never at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm looking for the data on this, but I know it in my heart. Mm,
Intuition. Here we go.
Like firefighters, camp directors have an inordinate number of people with ADHD in our profession.
Oh, good
And
call.
we're drawn to this profession because of the summer. And then we're like, no, I want to do this all year round. And then we get into the other stuff that is numbers and Excel sheets and stuff. That's why I'm always advocating for just keep it simple, like record 3 numbers, make yourself a reminder. That
Mm,
helps you get into it. But a lot of people who get into camp are getting into it for the difference they can make in child's lives and getting to see teenagers grow into passionate and incredibly capable young adults, none of which is quant and qual, as Mandy just said. None of that.
Yeah, none of that. Thanks, thanks very much.
Yeah.
That's super helpful. And I know Travis has asked for that study a couple times. We gotta put our grant application in, Travis, and we'll be off and running about the neurodivergency and the kinds of people that are called into this profession, and often they're not called into it either to run a business or to be sitting with piles and piles of administration and paper and numbers. Yeah, Lee, when you talked about, and then they let me have all this data, like, there's something part of me that shuddered and shut down because I was like, the last thing I like is being overwhelmed by too much data. I find I kind of trickle my way into it. And then once I'm into it, then I'm very submerged and immersed. I'm lost in it. But if somebody said, oh, here's an Excel spreadsheet, we maxed out the rows and the columns, could you sort this out? I'd be like, bye. I'm pretty sure I need to weed the garden. I know it's winter, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, listen, let me jump in on this as a note I wrote down. Everybody who's listening, I beg of you, listen to this, write down whatever notes you want, immediately call your camp registration software and tell them you
Mhm.
need an API.
What's an
Doesn't matter
API?
if you know what that means.
I
What that
don't.
means is just say, we need an API. How soon do we get an API? We need it immediately. I have been bugging the big registration softwares. I've been bugging them for 10 years for this.
Mhm.
And so API is an application programming interface. It means that one software can talk to another
Ah,
software because there's a little gateway they've built, which is called the API. That means the two things can talk to each other. I have forever wanted it just so I can send out good marketing emails and segment my lists and all of those good marketing terms, which we don't have to talk about today. But today I want it for people like two-thirds of us on this thing that see Excel sheets and get sweaty.
Yeah,
I
right.
want this interface because I want to put all of that data into an AI and say, please tell me the story of what's in here. Because you just
Okay.
start saying pivot tables and all that stuff, and again, I start to sweat. But if
Likewise.
I can just take all that to AI, and because I have an API between my registration software and AI you use, then you can do it. So that is
Got it.
another great thing you can do. You can skip right over learning Excel if you have that ability for your registration software to talk with other software. And
That
then
makes
once
a
you
whole lot
do
of
that, then I
sense.
can also help you with the marketing, and we can get really specific and stop wasting your time on marketing.
Yeah. Cool.
So
Even
you
when
can learn
somebody says
lessons when we have
pivot
that
to
tech.
me, even when someone says pivot to me in everyday language, because it became such a buzzword that kind of through the, I still go, oh, don't, I can't. Like I get so, we can't use Excel spreadsheet words in common popular language, please. I will freak out. Yeah, fair enough. And look, we are at a place where technology can do a lot of the hard thinking for us in terms of that kind of knowing the stats and knowing the math. And maybe that's why I hate stat. 8:30 Monday, Wednesday, Friday, winter term was stats class, and we had to learn the formulas. And that did my head in. That's not how my brain works. I want to know what it means. What does it mean? So when I see standard deviation, what is that telling me? And now we're at a place where actually Excel, just in case you're out there freaking out about Excel, and Excel is arguably one of the most basic ways to do numbers, by the way. The folks that are on here are using software that's way more clever and in depth than that. But Excel's about as good as I can. Like, we'll go calculator, Excel, tons of other stuff. And I never go past Excel because I'm like, I'm good, thanks. But Excel does all that calculating for you. You don't need to know the formulas. You don't actually really have to understand where the variables are and all of that, as long as you can click boxes and tell Excel what to do. There is a degree of learning. There definitely is. And that's why this API sounds like a dream, absolute dream. Where do you sign me up? Get me one of those. Give me 3.
It has to come from the registration
Software.
software companies.
Yeah, I did follow
Campminder
that,
has
but
one. It's
Okay.
not great, but I laud them all up and down the industry for taking the lead on this. The others I know are talking about it and trying to figure out how to do it, but
No pressure, Lee. No pressure, Lee. No pressure, Lee. You got people
well,
to talk to.
new software is young, so it has more potential than older legacy software that has been built on small changes for the last 10 years.
We are all about an API at Camptivities.
Woo!
So yeah, sign us up. We would love to see the softwares talk to each other and help people schedule better and make more decisions based on what they're doing. Yeah, in everyday life. So we're all about AI. We're all about APIs. We want the assessment there.
Excellent.
When the acronyms get beyond me, I'm like, do I back out slowly and let you guys have a private moment here? AIs and APIs. I'm like, oh my God, it's getting real nerd in here. I love it. Sorry, Travis, you were gonna go, mate.
We want to ask a couple of last questions, Lee. What in this industry is not getting enough study?
I think it's the business of camp is not good. And I think we're doing some great work. I mean, the work that I've seen in the last 10 years is unbelievable on the impact that camp has on children. But we can't have camp if people don't know how to run camp. And so that's what I would love to see is more research on what do the next generation of camp directors need to be successful. And as I've seen just being at camp conferences, we're starting to see the old guard of camp directors and owners and program directors starting to retire. And there needs to be a backfill. And I think Travis made a great point. Another conversation we've had is we've had a huge change up in who's at camp right now in the last couple of years. And so we need to do some more education.
We wanted to wrap up with one last question, and it was to ask you who we should talk to next. What researcher would you say is the next person to talk to, the next hot topic we need to chase down? What do you think?
Hold on. That's a huge question. That is,
We know.
Yes. Yes. Gosh. I mean, like I said, I always want to learn more about any area. I think the great things that you guys are doing is you're taking those small nuggets of knowledge that may not have been looked at and focusing on them and zooming in on them. So I look to you guys
Oh no.
on who you're going to have on because it's going to really like explode the next level of thinking. And that's what I'm looking for, is to get to talk about those things at our next conferences.
Yeah,
And
right.
right. And I think podcasts are the greatest way to do it. Like I listen to you guys, go for a run, and come back and feel inspired. And I think that's what people need, is more inspiration. So whoever you bring on, I know it's going to be like the best in what you guys can do.
No pressure to anybody that we're bringing in. Hey, but
Done.
you're supposed to inspire
Done.
the millions. Where could we find you next? When are you talking at the next conference? Where can folks, how do people find you? How do they come hear what you have to say? How do they get to a workshop, a talk, a conference? What's
Sure. So
happening?
I'm just starting back up again. So I'm trying to put a panel together for ACA Tri-State and working really on the business of camp and
Yep.
getting to hear from the leaders and getting to hear from the people who are emerging professionals and learning about the technology that people are using to help them with the business of camp. So that's where you'll probably see me there. I bet you're probably going to see me at a Spark conference coming up or a workshop. There's all kinds of places. I live on the East Coast in Virginia, so you're going to see me back in the area again, and providing some awesome insights. And for me, the best insights come from the people that I'm speaking to. So if anybody wants to learn about the next thing or the next question, send me the next question. I would
Right.
love to research and find out about it as well. So yeah.
And how do folks get a hold of you? How do you want them to reach out if they've got that next burning question or a great
Sure.
camp success story?
Lee at camptivities.com.
It's that simple. Geez.
That's simple. That's
And
simple.
that's when we say Lee, that's Lee. There's a few different ways
Yes.
to spell Lee, Lee at
Yes.
camptivities.com. Easy.
Well,
That's
thank you.
perfect. Thanks so much, Lee. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
It's
It's
great
been
to
a
have this conversation.
Yeah, total pleasure. And as usual, you bring all of that energy and bubble and effervescence to the conversation. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you didn't know, now you know, Camp Pros. I hope Mandy's giggle is going to get onto the end.